Hi, this is Ruth Ann Gallagher, and I want to talk about learning styles. I want to talk to you about 4 learning styles. The first one is formal text processing, or reading and writing. The next one is auditory. The next one is kinesthetic. And the next one is our visual learners. After that, I do want to talk a little bit about ELL, or English language learners. Let me talk about the formal text processors. Those students like to create lists and headings and take an outline and take complete lecture notes. The auditory learners, class attendance is important. They like to focus on lectures and take lectures for later review. Kinesthetic, use multiple senses, sight, sound, and class. They also like to fiddle with things, which is fine. Maybe they have a stress ball or a pencil. When appropriate, use tools or lessons which involve active participation. Visual learners like to underline important points, take complete lecture notes, then rewrite them. They also like to highlight things, and they like symbols, graphs, and they also like charts. Now, I want to tell you about these 4 learners to help explain this better. Years ago, about 20 years ago, my Ford Escort was having some problems. I was at the school, so I went over to our auto mechanic shop, and up popped 3 of my writing students. The first one was my oral or auditory learner, and he said, "Hey, let me listen to the engine." The next one was my kinesthetic learner. He's like, "Hey, wait, open up the hood and I'll look at the cables and make sure everything's connected." The next one was my visual learner, and he said, "Let me walk around the car and look underneath the car, and we'll put the car up on the hoist." Then up pops my formal text processing student, and he's like, "Oh, no, we need to go to the Chilton Manual and look up 1985 Ford Escorts and see if there were any recalls." Now, different learners, all of us have both formal text processing learning, or auditory learners, kinesthetic learners, and visual learners, but they are different. Let me give you a couple more examples. My auditory learners, they need to discuss material in study groups, summarize notes, read texts and notes, sometimes into a tape and out loud. Let me give you an example of my auditory learners. A couple years ago, I had a lot of wonderful soccer players in this class, but boy, they like to joke around and talk, and I had to kind of corral them. And I said, "Hey, it's important that we get through this material, so read the material, and then in class we're going to discuss the material." They love to discuss material. That worked well. Let me talk about my kinesthetic learners. A couple years ago, I was working with some HVAC or heating ventilation students. My class, of course, was at 3 o'clock. The end of the day, they'd been in class since 8 o'clock. They did not want to sit still, but we had to cover the material. So I said to them, "This is what we're going to do. We're going to take all those multiple choice questions at the end of your textbook. I'm going to Xerox those. You and your group of 3 are going to go to the beginning of that chapter and start answering those questions. And you're going to compete against that other group, the other groups of 3 that are also going to answer questions. And we'll see who can answer the most questions successfully within 20 minutes. The next one was my visual learners. Let me give you an example. I am a formal text processor. I love to read. I love to write. But that's not always the best learning style depending on the situation. I took my great nephew and some other nieces and nephews camping this summer, and I was having a heck of a time putting up the tent. I was reading the directions. Up comes my great nephew, brilliant young man, and he's a visual learner, and he said, Auntie, just give me all the pictures that correlate with how to put up the tent." And I'm like, "Okay." So I gave him all the pictures that showed the steps to follow in order on how to put up the tent. 5 minutes later, that tent was up and looking good. The final learner I want to talk about is your English language learner. 2 years ago, I had a student, very wonderful student, very bright. He was from France. When he wrote his essays, he always put his thesis at the end. And I was like, why does he do that all the time? So I talked to our ESL specialist, and she said, "Well, in France, that's the way you write an essay." And I'm like, oh, I need to shift a little bit and talk to him about how we write essays in America. All right, so again, learning style strategies. I wanted to cover 4 main learning styles and talk a little bit about our ELL learners. This was Ruth Ann Gallagher. Thank you.